So this box load
And then
calculator is an online tool. It's free, obviously, from Emerson, and we introduced it about 8 months ago. It's one of my favorite tools to use because it's simple, but it's also very powerful. And I'll show you some of the basic functionality and some of the advanced functionality as well. If you have any questions or comments, I know there's a lot of people on the line. You could probably type them into the chat box, and if time permits, we'll hit those chat questions at the end. And if not, you could always talk to your sales manager, and he or she could, can get with me to answer those questions. Are you seeing my screen there, Julie?
Yes, I am.
It might be a little small. I'm having a hard time with the F5 to make it big.
I'm going to mute everybody and unmute. Okay, you are still unmuted, Brian. Okay.
Can you hear me okay? So
yep, you're good.
There's a QR code there. If you point your smartphone camera at that, that will take you directly to the link that's below. So this is not a program you have to download. It's all online now, either through a web browser or you can use it on your smartphone, as a mobile as long as you have internet access. There's really two portions of this box load calculator. There's the first part that calculates loads, walk-in box loads, cooler or freezer loads. And then there's the second part that helps you select Copeland brand condensing units, to satisfy that load. What this kind of does is it eliminates the need to run separate box load calculations and then do manual selection of equipment from the printed catalogs. And so it's supposed to be kind of a one-stop shop. As I mentioned, it's web-based, and I'll leave that up there on the screen for just another second. You could also just Google Emerson box load calculator. It should be the first result that you get. Now, if you're comfortable and if you're used to doing box load calculations other ways, using printed tables or other box load calculators, that's totally fine. You can skip the first part of this and still use the second part of the program to select condensing units. What I'm showing here is a table that's near and dear to my heart. I've been using it for many, many years. It's a box load sizing table from about 1968, and I think it was developed from the ASHRAE guidelines in the early 1960s. There's nothing wrong with this. This is still accurate. You can still use these type of tools, but the calculator allows you to do maybe a little bit more sophisticated calculations and tweak it a little bit to get your loads. Anytime you're going to do walk-in sizing, coolers, freezers, whether it's a new installation or whether it's a replacement installation, I would encourage you to find out as much as you can about the job site. So I've just listed a few hints here really quick. These are some of the inputs in the calculator that you would get from doing a survey of the job, okay? What is the ambient temperature that the condensing unit is going to see, that the box is going to see? What are your storage temperature requirements, box temperature requirements? Especially important for freezers. Does your user say that they want a 0-degree Fahrenheit freezer, or do they run it, minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit, or maybe even colder? And what sort of humidity requirements might be needed. The dimensions of the box, the type of insulation, what kind of construction, is the entire walk-in box outside and exposed, or is it maybe just one wall? Is that wall exposed to the sun? How often is the door open? How often does the user go in and out? What's being stored? What other loads they might see? Some large walk-ins, for example, there's a fork truck that runs in and out of the box. So all these things are things that you should make a note of. They're not all inputs that you necessarily have to know to use the calculator, but like I said, to really refine your calculations. If you want to know the implications of any of those things, I would encourage you to go to the Copeland's refrigeration manual, which you can find through online product information. It's the third one ever written back in the 1960s, but it's still good, AE 103. It details in great detail all of those things and what they mean. So if you have any questions, you can go to there. Now, Julie, I'm going to try to switch to my browser to go live here. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and then I'm going to share my Google Chrome. I use Google Chrome as my browser. Can you see that screen? I'm assuming
yes,
that you can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's two boxes here, as you saw on the earlier screen. The left box is to calculate the room load, and the right box is to select the condensing unit. So let's quickly go through an example of calculating the room load. And I'm going to run through a typical cooler example. That's 35-degree box. I'm sizing it for worst case ambient, outdoor ambient of 95 degrees Fahrenheit in this case. I'm going to skip the country and the location. You can get very detailed about the location, and I'll explain later how the calculator takes that into consideration. But most coolers are sized for 18 hours of runtime under worst case conditions. You can make that 16 hours rather, I should say. You can make that 18 or 20 hours, depending on your preference. I'll leave it at 16 just so there's a little bit of room for error there, a little bit of safety. And my box is 10 by 12, and it's got 9-foot ceilings. So you can see right away the calculator goes to calculation of room volume and room area. Shows you a little schematic of what that looks like. If it wasn't a rectangle, you could do different shapes, U shapes or L shapes. You could pretty much simulate any sort of walk-in box that you might have. The key thing here, though, is to get the volume and the area as close as possible, because that's going to affect the load calculation. So right away, the calculator does a load breakdown. You can see at the bottom of the screen. The wall load, so heat transferred through the wall, is about 25% of the total load. The air infiltration load is about 50% of the total load. And the product load, or pulling down product, is a small portion of the load, and there's miscellaneous loads. Now, right away, you could take this system load calculation. If you just want a really quick calculation or quick answer, you could say, okay, the calculator is telling me the system load is about 11,000 BTU per hour. And right away, you can go and start selecting equipment. But if you want to tweak this a little bit, you'll see there's some buttons here with a little pencil, right? You can go in here and you can actually do some very detailed tweaking. So you can, as you can see, you can change the floors, the ceilings, the walls, the type of insulation, the thickness of insulation for the wall loads. For the air loads, it'll allow you to do things. You can talk about how many times the doors open and things like that. There's a lot of very sophisticated inputs if you want to tweak your load. The product load is interesting, so you could actually put in different types of product, and do they need to be pulled down or not? Are we freezing it? Are we putting the meat in there to be frozen, or whatever it is? So you can get very, very sophisticated with this. Miscellaneous loads, as I mentioned, might be additional lighting loads or people loads. If it's, for example, if it's a walk-in room where there's people working doing meat prep, you may add that to your load. That's another 100 watts of a constant load if there's somebody in the room, or if you're driving fork trucks. You don't have to do all these things. You can take the system load and you can transfer directly to the equipment selection, which is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to click this button that says Add to Selection. I should mention one other thing. If you click Report, this is a nice feature. I won't do it right here, but it'll open up it will create a PDF that you can save, you could print, you could email, that includes all of your inputs. So it's terrific reference to have if somebody wants to go back later and say, hey, how did you come up with that load, or why did you select that condensing unit for that application? So I would encourage you to use the Report button. But I'm going to click Add to Selection, and you'll see it jumps to the second part of the calculator, which is the selection criteria. Now, if you already know the design load, you see the second box here took the design load from the first portion and put it here, the 11,000 BTU per hour. If you already know the design load, so if you use a different calculator, box load calculator, that's fine. Or maybe you're not powering a walk-in, maybe you're powering some display cases, and the display case manufacturer told you what the load is going to be on those display cases. Go ahead and put it in here. You can manually enter it. The calculator won't explode. I'm going to do condensing units. You can do complete systems. The tool has a very powerful, it will also do evaporator selection, unicooler selection. I'm going to stay away from that right now, and because I just want to demonstrate unicooler selection, condensing units, excuse me. So I'm going to say condensing unit. There's my design load, 60 hertz. We have a cooler, not a freezer. It's a walk-in, and I'm looking for an outdoor X-line Copeland condensing unit for this application. The tool already has baked in also the M line and the F lines, but I'm going to go with an X line. 208, you have to select the voltage, 208, 230. All the fields that are required have the little red asterisk there. So very important is refrigerant. Dare I continue to use 404A? I think I'm going to, just for this illustrative example. I might have picked one of the newer low GWP refrigerants, but when I worked through this example earlier, it was with 404A, so if you'll bear with me, you don't actually have to select the phase now. It could be single phase or three phase. It doesn't typically have a large impact on the selection of the unit, as we have, single phase and three phase. Well, I'll go ahead with a single phase 208, 230 unit. This is going to be an outdoor condensing unit, and we're just going to do with one condensing unit to satisfy that entire load. That box didn't fill, and that's a little problem with my browser, but I do know it says one. And there's some additional correction factors. Again, here's where it took the 95-degree. We're sizing for a 95-degree outdoor ambient. If you need to adjust that, if you're in the Great North and you want to maybe use a little lower temperature, or if you know this outdoor unit's going to be on a roof and it gets up, regularly up to 120 degrees. If it's a roof maybe in Phoenix, Arizona, you want to go a little bit higher to size the unit, that's fine. There's some altitude correction factors, which I usually don't mess around too much with that. And then there's the box temperature and the TD for the unit cooler, which 10 is the default. 10-degree TD on the unit cooler is the default. So we're talking about a saturated suction temperature of 25 degrees. And when I click search equipment, you'll see it comes up with a recommended choice. The best fit for that load is medium temp X-line unit, 1.5 horsepower, single phase. So there it is, XFAM 015Z. CFV. So that meets the criteria, and you can generate a report that has all the inputs and the outputs in that report. If you scroll down, all of the condensing units that could meet that criteria are listed. So maybe you don't have that unit in stock at your branch. Maybe you don't have the 1.5 horsepower, and you want to know, could I use a 1.7 horsepower or maybe a 1.2 horsepower, something close. So what the tool will do is it will select all the condensing units and kind of sort them by the best match. So smaller condensing units, larger condensing units. And what it does is it will tell you the runtime over here. So, you could make a decision. You can make a risk decision whether you want to go with a little bit smaller, a little bit larger unit. Could you still satisfy the runtime requirements? And typically, there's some overlap. And if you want, you can select a different unit to select. So that was just a really quick rundown. Julie, I don't know if there was anybody who pulled up any chat questions. Is there an option for heavy usage in the drop-downs? Well, that's a good question because and that question came from Scott Aveni. I believe there is, Scott, and most other tools do select, heavy usage. Basically, that has to do with a lot of door openings, a lot of air infiltration. If you remember from the load, half of the load was the air load. So normally we think of the load as the heat coming in through the panels, but the air load really is more significant. And if I go to that, trying to see here. So you can do here. You can do openings per hour, how often your doors are open, how effective your strip curtains are, all kinds of tweaks to that. But I would say that if you were going to do a heavy load, it would be part of the air load. Any other questions in the chat? Let's see. Will it select an AWEF unit? David Dowan asks. Yes. So the AWF scores are being added and being added to this, so it will kick out units, only units that are approved with an AWF score for walk-ins, whether they're indoor or outdoor, medium temp or low temp. It's still an evolving situation, as you know. If you listen to any of our E360 webinars on AWEF and walk-ins, that July is the deadline for having all of everything updated, all the literature updated, all the selection tools, and we'll have all that will be in here as well. So it will select units that are AWEF approved. Yes. Let's see if there's any other chat questions here. That's all I've got, Julie. So I don't know if you want me to pass this back to you.
Yep, I will go ahead and take it back.
The only other thing I would add is try out this tool. Go online, try it out. Send us some feedback if there's anything you like or don't like. You can send it to me or to Julie or to your sales manager, and we'll always listen to your feedback and we'll incorporate into the tool if possible.
Yeah, thank you. And I was just trying to find, thanks, Brian, really appreciate that. I was just trying to find, we did just send out an announcement that the box load calculator link is now also available in OPI. So, you know, it's easy to get to, easy access to it. I will send that along as part of the follow-up on this email to everyone. I do want to unmute everyone and see if there's any other questions that anyone has. I'm going to go ahead and unmute and let's see. All right, no music, no background music today. Are there any questions for Brian Beinacek or for any of us really that are on the call?
Julie, it's Chuck Bersha. I wanted to ask Brian, can you change the TD? He had it set at 10-degree TD. Can you change it if you wanted to change it to 12 or 15-degree TD?
Yes. So if you're using the calculator to model an entire system, it will automatically take the evaporator TD into account. I was showing you an example of just a condensed unit selection, and in that case.
Okay, but you can change that if you need to. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, one other thing, if there's no other questions, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I would just recommend that I see Brian saying is if you guys can take a look at it, open the link up, play around with it. The reports that you see, what you can see about the reports and how they look. You click on those links after when you're playing around with it.
Hey, Julie.
Yeah.
This is Scott. I just wanted to add to that. Hey, Julie. There is a hyperlink while you're in the condensing unit selection section that will take you right to the energy calculator for X-Line. So if you click on that,
that's a good point.
You can dial right into the zone you live in geographically. You can dial right into your cost of kWh, and it'll generate a real nice report on the energy savings of the X-Line versus a traditional scroll, a recip, or a semi-hermetic unit. And you can include that. You can either print that or download it as a contractor job packet, and you can include that with your quotes that you give to your contractors. It makes for a real nice presentation, real nice submittal for an X-Line unit.